the schools and the universities that have these athletic programs, many of them make a lot of money off of television or other endorsements by different products like Gatorade, Nike, Reebok. So a lot of these schools make a lot of money from the sports that are played at those schools. And the athletes only get education. They don't get any further money, only their free education. So today, let's take a look here. Oh, and I am so happy that Winston and Nathan are here today
Uh,
because,
please turn on your camera, students. I saw three students joining us. Please mute your microphone, students.
okay, is everyone still able to see my
Yes,
screen now that I'm sharing?
yes, yes,
Okay, great. And is it a good size?
yes, yes.
Okay, great, great. So then, our question, should college athletes be paid? So this is something that we will talk about at least for the next couple of classes, especially next week. But from the video, your homework assignment was to answer 3 questions. The first one was just a summary of why the video said that athletes should be paid. The second question was why the video said athletes should not be paid. And the last question was asking your opinion of what do you think? Should athletes be paid or not? So here on the screen, you can see what your classmates thought. So Joshua, Winston, Robert, and Elvis, I'll say half. I'll say Elvis half agreed, um, based on his answer that he provided. But I put him in the yes column. And and then Nathan did not think so. And there were 2 other students who also didn't think so, but I didn't have your names. So before we go any further, just please always remember to put your name on your worksheet. So I leave a little section for your name. Just remember to write your name in there so I know whose homework is turned in. Okay. So we had 2 people, and so hopefully maybe one of your classmates, Nathan, will raise their hand and support you in your in the argument if they were the ones who also did not think college athletes should be paid. So I'll start with this. How about who do we have here? Winston, you were first in for the yeses. Why did you think that college athletes should be paid?
Because they make much money for the school by the sport, and the school just need to pay them just little salary that is enough. So I think it's good to pay them.
Good. Okay. And so just at the very beginning, you mentioned that the school makes very much money. We're going to say very much money instead of many much or much many money. Very much money. So the school makes a lot, very much money. There's so much money being made by the schools. Why not pay the athletes just a little bit? They don't have to make millions of dollars, but a little bit to help them with daily life, um, because being a college athlete also does take a lot of time. So many of the college athletes have to train, they have to go to practice. If you're in Division 1, which a division is like a group of schools or a category of schools. So Division 1 is the biggest and the most competitive. So they're kind of the best athletes or the biggest named schools. And then you have some other divisions lower that are maybe smaller schools and not as well known. But especially for Division 1, the students travel to play games. So you may have to fly to all over the United States for your basketball games, for your football games. And so that takes a lot. And maybe they should be compensated. But Nathan, you have a different perspective. Why do you disagree? Why do you not
And
think? Why shouldn't athletes be paid?
when they enter to the professional, and they will get a lot of salary. So maybe uh, they have to have a competition to enter the professional.
Okay, so they need so they will make a lot of money once they become a professional.
Yeah.
And so college is kind of meant to be a competitive or a space for these athletes to become better
Yes.
before they enter the professionals.
Uh,
Okay, and that's a good point. So good. So we have two opinions there. We had a for and against. And so I read everyone else's too, but we're gonna go to the next thing. So that leads us to our topic today. So just there, you heard Winston and Nathan give two opinions that differed. One agreed that they should be paid, one did not think they should be paid. And so we can call that an argument or a debate. And so today we are going to learn, or at least start learning, some of our parts of an argument and how we can construct or build a good argument whenever we want to have an opinion and we want to support that opinion and hopefully get other people to think the same way, to try to convince other people to think the same way we do. So Nathan may want everyone else to also agree with him, to think, no, college athletes shouldn't be paid. But then Winston thinks they should. And he also is trying to convince everyone, no, yes, yes, they should be paid. And so there are some parts and some ways that we can make an effective argument. So let's get started. Okay, so aren't arguments bad? When you've heard of an argument before, what did that mean? If you've heard someone say that they had an argument or that there was an argument, what did that mean? Was it a good thing if someone had an argument? How about Joshua? What do you think, Joshua? Is it good to get into an argument?
I think yes. At least they can talk to each other and have different opinion. Not just don't talk to each other and think about just think about yourself what you think.
Oh, good. I like that. Did everyone catch what Joshua said about an argument? I really like what he said. So he said that it's good to have an argument because both people get to say what they think and talk about it. So arguments don't have to be bad. That's exactly right, Joshua. So sometimes you will hear people say that they got into an argument, or you will hear that someone is getting into an argument or having an argument. And sometimes that is a bad thing if we are fighting and arguing. So like this person on the phone here. If we see the person on the phone and he's yelling at someone, maybe he's having an argument. That may be a bad argument. But sometimes we can also use argument as a position that you have or a reason or justification that you give for an opinion. So if I get into an argument, that is maybe that discussion. And sometimes that can be a heated discussion or an angry discussion. but it doesn't have to be. Like Joshua said, sometimes an argument can just be an exchange of ideas, of differing opinions, and it doesn't have to be you did this, I did that. It doesn't have to be like that. So an argument can be good. But if you state your argument, if I said that's a good argument. So when Nathan said that he doesn't believe college athletes should be paid because they will make a lot of money in the professionals, I could say, Nathan, that was a good argument. That's a good argument, meaning that's good reasoning. You gave me a good reason why college athletes should not be paid. That's Nathan's position. That's his argument. His argument is that they're going to make a lot of money in the professionals, so they don't need it now. Pardon. So now that we have that settled, let's get into the 5 different parts of an argument. So if you want to build an argument and you want to have an opinion and support that opinion with facts or try to convince others that your opinion is correct, then you will want to use these 5 parts of an argument. We have 5 of them: the claim, reason, evidence, warrants, and your acknowledgement and response. So anytime that we're going to make an argument or give our opinion and try to convince someone of our position, these are the 5 things that we should do to make a good argument. So let's check out the first one. Okay, the claim. How about someone read that for me? Can anyone read the definition of claim for me?
Me?
Yeah, go ahead, Joshua. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Claim. Your claim is your main point.
And what's the example there?
The Olympics should be held every 2 years rather than every 4.
Okay. So we're going to use this same theme or this same point or claim throughout the next 5 parts so that we can see an example. So let's just say we're talking about the Olympics. They're happening this month. They're happening in Japan this month, very soon. And so some people think that the Olympics should not be every 4 years, but instead should be every 2 years. That's an argument, and that's a claim that people have. So the claim is your main point, the main thing that you would want to say. So, Winston, in your example, when you gave your opinion, what was your claim? What was the main point of what you said? So I asked you, should college athletes be paid? And what was
Yes.
your answer?
Yes, they should be paid.
Okay. So that's your main point. Everything else that you say is all to support that claim. So your main point is that college athletes should be paid. That means that Nathan's claim on the opposite side was that college athletes should not be paid. So that's our starting point. Okay? So that's our main point in our argument. You don't think that they should be paid, Nathan, whereas Winston thinks they should. So that's our claim. All right. Let's look at the next piece, the reason. Does anyone, before I go into it, can anyone take a stab at what they think the reason is? what would the reason of an argument be? Anyone think of that? Robert, what do you think? What could a reason be? Oh, we can't hear you.
Uh,
Oh, there we go.
Reason is to support your claim to, yes.
Okay, almost very close. There's another part that's probably closer to that. So that sounds more like evidence, the support to what you think. So the reason is it's close. Usually reason and evidence are kind of hand in hand. But the reason answers the question, why are you making the claim? So the reason is the entire is why you feel the way that you feel, or why this is important. Why are you making this claim? So let's think about our Olympics. Our claim was the Olympics should be held every 2 years rather than every four. The reason I believe that is so that aging athletes have more chances to compete. So that aging athletes have more chances to compete. That's the reason. So let's go back to our previous example with Nathan and Winston. What was Nathan's reason? Why? So his claim was college athletes should not be paid. What was the reason? What was the reason he felt that way? Zach, what was the reason? Were you? Oh, you may. I think you were here when he said it. Do you know what his reason was?
Can you say the question again?
Sure. What reason did Nathan give that he thinks that college athletes should not be paid? Why does he think that? Why does he think that they should not be paid? Did you hear him?
No.
Oh, okay. That's
I
fine. That's okay. It's okay. So, how about Nathan? What was your reason? What do you think? Why did you say that? Why did you say that college athletes shouldn't be paid?
Because when they enter to the professional, they will get more money than college.
Good. So when they enter the professionals. So when we refer to professional sports, since there's more than just one, we'll say professionals. When they get to the professionals. Okay. So that was your reason. Good job. So the reason's pretty straightforward. Now, the rest of these are things that maybe you all didn't do when we had our homework assignment, because I didn't ask for you to go this in depth. But let's get to the next one. So Robert did such a good job giving us the definition of evidence. He said it was the support for our claim, and that's exactly right. So Robert, you got the evidence definition. So evidence offers tangible support. Tangible support. Does anyone know that that word means tangible? Tangible support? Okay. So tangible is a word that means, like, if something is tangible, it's real, it's physical. I can touch it. It is factual. When we talk about tangible support, we mean things that aren't just made up and thoughts in our head. We want actual evidence. Is there a report? Are there facts or figures that we have to support our arguments? So, for instance, if I were Winston and I said, college athletes should be paid because the colleges make a lot of money from the sports that they have.
You are muted.
Oh, Oh, Are you able to hear me now?
No.
Oh,
Yes, I can hear you.
Teacher, I
Me
can
too.
hear you.
Me too.
Yes.
I can
Yeah,
hear
I
you.
Okay.
hear okay.
Oh,
Teacher, I
okay.
can. Okay.
Okay. Okay. I will keep going then. So if I were Winston, I said, I think college athletes should be paid because the schools make so much money. Now, if I just stopped it there, how do I know what Winston said was true? He has told me that schools make a lot of money. How does he know that? Where did that come from? Did he make that up? Where did that come from? And so that is why we want tangible evidence, something that we can check and that is a fact. So if Winston would have said, "Oh, the schools make a lot of money. In 2020, Division 1 universities made over $2 billion on their sports programs." That's evidence. That supports his claim and his reason. That supports that. He's saying they make a lot of money, and here's how much money they made. And most of us would all agree that $2 billion is a lot of money. So that is a way that he could have supported his claim with something that's tangible, with tangible support. Okay. Let's go on to the warrant. So the fourth part that we need to consider is the warrant. So a warrant expresses principles, shared beliefs, or general assumptions. Okay, so can anyone tell me just what is an assumption? If I asked, what is an assumption? Does anyone know what an assumption is? Okay. Anyone? Okay. So an assumption is something that we think is true or that we assume is true. So assumption, assume, but we assume means we think it's true, but we don't know for sure, or there really isn't, we haven't seen the proof that it is true. We just assume that it is true. That is an assumption. Or a shared belief is similar to a general assumption, but it's something that most people would agree is true, or that most people would believe is would believe. So when I said that all schools that they make a lot of money and that they made $2 billion, it's a shared belief by most people that $2 billion is a lot of money. So that's a shared belief by most people. Okay. So in our example of the Olympics, we had that I think the Olympics should be held every 2 years instead of four, so that aging athletes can have more opportunities to compete. And the reasoning, that was my reason. My evidence in that case was that, oh, I didn't actually go over the evidence of that part, that piece of it. But my evidence in that case was that a study conducted in 1999 by the Organization of Olympic Athletes shows that many athletes peak during non-Olympic years. So they're the best. Excuse me. Many athletes are the best during non-Olympic years. And so once the Olympics comes, they can't compete anymore because now it's been too long. If I was at my best in 2019, it might be too late for me to be at my best in 2021. So that was my evidence, is that I quoted this study by the Olympic organization. And so my warrant now, my shared belief or principle. By including older athletes, the Olympics promotes inclusion and continuity for athletes to useful values. So by inclusion, I mean everyone is welcome. So inclusion means that you're welcoming everyone. You're welcoming different kinds of people, different athletes, different ages. That's what inclusion is. We're including them. And so inclusion is a value that most people share. Most people would think that being inclusive and including many people is a good thing, right? Is that something that most people believe? That it's good to include lots of people and diverse and different kinds of people? Is that something that most people would believe, that that's a good thing? Yeah, I think so. I think most people would believe that including as many people into an event as possible, like the Olympics, would be a good thing. So that's a value. That's a shared belief that most people have. And so in our example of college and whether we should pay athletes, one of the shared beliefs that you will hear often, and some of you talked about in your responses, is fairness. Fairness. That it's fair to pay athletes, or that it's not fair that the schools make so much money and the athletes get none. That's not fair. So fairness can be a principle or a shared belief, fairness. And some of you wrote that as in your responses to the homework, that you didn't think or that you did think athletes should be paid because it isn't fair that so much money is made by the school and the athletes don't get anything. Some of you said that. So that is a shared principle. That's your warrant. In your argument, that was your warrant, this principle of fairness. Okay? And last, we have our acknowledgement and response. So acknowledgement and response. So that means that you acknowledge that other opinions exist. You acknowledge that there is another side to your argument. So in our college basketball or college example, Winston thought one thing, Nathan thought something else. So when we acknowledge that, we could say something. If I believe that colleges should be paid, I could say, I know that some people believe that athletes should not be paid because they will make a lot of money once they go to the professionals. But I think that they should still receive money while in school to help them pay for some of their expenses. That is an acknowledgement, because even though I believe that college athletes should be paid, I acknowledge that Nathan thinks differently and that some people think differently. So that's our acknowledgement. Okay? So now I want to just watch a video, and while we're watching the video, I want you to try to take a note or jot down, type out or jot down any of these that you hear. So we went through 5. We have the claim, the reason, evidence, warrant, and our acknowledgement as well. Okay, our acknowledgement. So when you're watching this video, see if you can pick out when the athlete does each of those 5 things. So he does do each of the 5 things in this video. So let's see if you can figure out and have an example of how he does those things, okay? So
My next guest says that paying students is wrong, and he's got some pretty credible credentials of his own. Cody McDavis played D1 basketball for the University of Northern Colorado from 2012 to 2015. He's joining me now from Minneapolis, where he's attending the Final Four. He's currently a student at the UCLA Law School, where he's the managing editor of Law Review. And he wrote this piece for the New York Times: paying students to play would ruin college sports. By the way, Cody, I'm far more impressed. I'm not taking away anything from your game, but I am, as a lawyer, far more impressed that you are the managing editor of Law Review. So well done.
Thanks,
Did you
Michael.
hear anything
Appreciate
from
you having
Senator Murphy? Sure. And did Senator Murphy turn your head at all, or are you still of that mindset that paying athletes would be a mistake?
Look, I respect what the senator is saying. I think he's coming from a good place, but as a former Division I student athlete who's been through it, who has studied the issues surrounding this matter for the majority of the past decade, I respectfully disagree.
How come? Make your case.
So I think that what gets lost in this whole issue is that we're talking about men's basketball and football. And moreover, we're talking about men's basketball and football at a select number of universities. The Clemsons, the UConns, the Alabamas, those are the universities that the senator is speaking of. But he even mentioned that UConn can't afford the facilities that Clemson can. And if UConn can't do it, then the smaller universities like myself, Northern Colorado, or other small schools, they can't either. And so the problem that arises is that paying men's basketball student athletes and football student athletes is a cost to any institution. And where are they going to get this money from? What happens is they end up cutting other sports to make this money arise. Men's basketball and football student athletes, they are.
So let's pause the video right there for a second, just to give a little bit of context and to catch up, just in case. I know that there aren't subtitles here to help out, so I'll make sure that I put some subtitles on the future videos. But just to catch up, so he already has given his reason, or something that he thinks is a reason why he doesn't believe that we should pay college athletes. Did anyone catch the reason he gave? I'll give you a clue. It has to do with the size of the school and what they can afford to pay. Did you catch anything about that? So one thing that he mentioned was that large schools and a select number, so just a few large schools, actually have the money to be able to pay student athletes. So even though there are thousands of colleges in the United States, only a few of them actually make enough money on their athletic programs to afford to be able to pay student athletes. So that's a problem, because it's not fair for the small schools, right? If you are an athlete and you go to a smaller school, is that very fair that your school can afford to pay you, but if you went to a different school, you could get paid? So some would say that's not fair. So that's one reason that this athlete has given to his argument. Okay, let's keep going.
In a sport that is a revenue generating sport, generally, other sports, no other sport generates revenue. And so you have to find a way to pay these student athletes, and you're going to pay your men's basketball and your football student athletes, and other student athletes are going to lose opportunities because of it. In the long run, I see that as a huge problem.
Are the athletes themselves happy with the current arrangement? I mean, the senator points out that $14 billion comes in annually and $2.9 billion ends up in scholarship monies. How do the athletes feel about this? Do you think that you speak for many?
I do. I do believe that I speak for many. I've been contacted by many, many current and former Division I student athletes across the country since my op-ed, and well before then. I'm well connected across the country just by the benefit of being a former student athlete and speaking on this issue. Specifically, there's a student athlete at the University of Idaho who reached out to me and mentioned that after 2015, there was this issue with cost of attendance stipends that came out. These are cash stipends that are going to student athletes for their cost of living at any given university. And what she saw on her soccer team that had just won back-to-back championships was that her president informed her that her team was very likely going to be cut unless she spoke up about it, or unless her team advocated for their remaining a part of the university, because they chose to give cost of attendance stipends to their men's basketball and football student athletes.
Okay. Did anyone catch the evidence? He just told us his evidence to support his view. It's okay if you didn't catch it. It's pretty fast. So let's think about his evidence. So he just told a story about a student athlete. He told a story. And that story said that at a university, they decided to pay the men's football and men's basketball athletes an amount of money for their cost of living. So it wasn't very much money, but it was enough to buy them things like food, clothing, if they needed any supplies, maybe for school, or maybe even to travel home to see their families. Maybe they are going to school far away and they need money to go back and forth from home to school. So this university decided to pay them an amount of money to support that. And guess what happened? The university then didn't have enough money to support keeping some of the smaller athletic programs. So this particular athlete played on a smaller program that maybe wasn't as popular and maybe didn't bring as much money to the university. And so they said, we're going to get rid of that sport because we don't have enough money now that we are paying these other athletes. Does that seem fair? No, I don't think that seems very fair. So all of the students are going to the same university and they're all playing sports, different sports, but they're playing sports. But now this student is going to lose their sport. And when they lose their sport, they lose their scholarship. So they have a scholarship or they get money to attend school to play the sport. If the sport goes away, the scholarship goes away and they no longer get money to be at school. So that doesn't seem fair. So that is his evidence as to why he thinks athletes shouldn't be paid. He has an example that actually happened. It's not something he made up. It's something that actually happened. Right? Yeah. And so that's his evidence. He's supporting his opinion with that evidence. Okay, there's just a few minutes left and we'll just watch the end here.
These pressures that are created by the universities that have a lot of finances. Again, the Auburns, the Clemsons, the Alabamas, who can give these kind of incentives to their student athletes, it trickles down. And it causes pressures on other universities to do the same thing for their football and their men's basketball student athletes. And that causes great losses for other student athletes in other sports that this country does not give great attention to, but are giving their blood, sweat, and tears to those same sports. And I think that they deserve the respect and the opportunity to get an education at the university that they chose, and moreover, to play the sport at the university that they chose. We do not talk about them enough.
I take it you're going to be a trial lawyer.
Okay, so that's when he just finished off his argument there. So let's go on now. Okay, So let's just take a quick look at this. So we already went through a couple of the examples, but let's think through the 5 different parts of an argument that we saw in this video. And let's just do a quick review of those. So first, we had his claim. And I won't play the video for each of these, but we had his claim. So in the video, his claim was, Robert, can you read his claim?
Okay. Paying student athletes is wrong and will ruin college sports.
Okay. Athletes. Payne's athlete. So that's how he wanted to. Could you read that one more time? Payne's athletes?
Paying student athletes.
There
is-
you go. Mm-hmm. Good. Okay, so that was his claim.
What next?
Now, the reason. So the reason. We talked about this one. Only a small number of schools from the largest conferences generate enough revenue to pay students. So this was what I talked about when I said the large schools are able and have the money to pay their student athletes. But if you're a smaller school, you may not have that money. And if you're a smaller school and you don't have that much money to pay your athletes, what else can you do besides cut or get rid of other sports so that you can use that money to pay for your basketball or football program? Okay. So that was his reason as of why he doesn't think athletes should be paid. Now, the evidence. What evidence did he give? Oh, and I have a typo here. There's a typo. Okay. So, whose, this should not be whose apostrophe, just for the students to know. This is a typo here. But so the story of a student whose WHOSE, not this one, university threatened to get rid of the sport she played in order to pay for the stipends given to the school's football and basketball players. So that was that story where one athlete's program was going to go away because they had to pay for the other programs. So that was his evidence. He had a real story, a real situation where someone would have lost out on the opportunity to play a sport at their school. Okay, and next,
My next.
the warrant. All right, so the warrant, so it's the principle of fairness, right? The principle of fairness. How about Abner? Do you mind reading the rest of that sentence? The principle of fairness?
Reading what?
Oh, I think we were having a little bit of trouble hearing you. How about Zach? Zach, do you mind reading that sentence? The principle of fairness?
The principle of fairness for all college athletes, no matter how large or small their school are.
Yes. Okay. So the principle of fairness, no matter how large or small their schools are. So this was the warrant, because most people would believe that athletes should be treated the same, whether they're going to this big school or this smaller school, whether they're in a Division I conference where they're playing football, or they're in a Division I conference where they're playing water polo or they're playing tennis. They should have the same opportunities because they're going to the same school. Why do some of the athletes get paid, but then other athletes don't? And furthermore, their programs they might get rid of those programs altogether in order to support the students who they're paying. So most people would think that it's fair to pay all the students or none of the students, but that's not what is feasible. That's not what is possible because there's not enough money at some universities or some schools. So that is our warrant. It's our general principle, the principle of fairness. We want to be fair. We want to be fair. Okay. And lastly, the acknowledgement and response. So in this video, and I want to point this out, in this video, our speaker actually does his acknowledgement and response at the beginning before he makes the rest of his case. So in the video, he speaks about a senator who thinks that college athletes should be paid. And you may have heard, but he said, I respectfully disagree. That he thought the senator had good points, or that he was coming from a good place or had good intentions, but that he had to respectfully disagree. So that was him acknowledging that, hey, I understand why you think this. I understand what you're saying and the evidence and the support that you're giving, but I respectfully disagree. And so that was his acknowledgement that other opinions exist, but he wants us to believe his is correct. Okay, so I know that today was a lot of information and a lot of new stuff. So, but that's okay because in our next classes, we're going to take each one and really think about each part of our argument. And by the end of the next couple of weeks, you all will be making a full case and a full argument with all of the appropriate parts to support your position and to support your opinions. So don't worry if you didn't remember each category tonight. It was a lot. It was just to introduce the topic, and we will go into each specific section over the next couple of weeks. Okay? So for homework, there is a video that I've put online on your Google Classroom. And what I would like you to do is something similar to what we did here. I want you to watch the video and then write down and see if you can identify each part of the argument. So the claim, the reason, the evidence, the warrant, and the acknowledgement. See if you are able to identify it. Now, some tips. On the video, which I know that you all probably know because you're younger and you are much better at this than probably I am, but if you're having trouble listening or understanding the words on the YouTube video, you can slow down the speed. And so there is an option to slow down the playback speed. And if anyone needs help doing that, send me a message and I can show you, or I can show you how to do that. Or I saw some classmates shaking their heads. So if some of you know each other, maybe reach out to one of your friends and they can show you as well. But you can slow down the playback speed so that at least you can hear each word a little more clearly. Okay? All right, class. I
Could you
will
stop sharing?
Oh yes, stop sharing. Yep.
Give me 30 seconds. All right. So you can finish what you wanted to say, or
No, I am done. Just that they can slow down the playback speed, and so if they have trouble listening, they're speaking too fast. Just select that option to slow it down, and hopefully that will make it a little easier to hear each word.
okay, good. So students, in our group chat, I will always post a link. You have to click on the link in order to join our class. So Quentin, they didn't know that. That's why some of them were late to school, late to class.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
All
Thank
right.
you. Yes.
Okay, students, please mute your microphone and say thank you, Teacher Quentin.
Thank you,
you,
Quentin.
Quentin.
Thank you, Teacher Quentin.
Yes. I will see you next week. Have a good weekend.
You too. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
Haha.